The stars looked different from the command deck of the Atlas, humanity's flagship vessel. Commander Jack Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as thousands of warships moved into formation around his own. Their metal hulls gleamed under the light of Sol, Earth's sun growing smaller in the distance as the greatest armada in galactic history prepared to leave humanity's home system. "Status report," Jack said, his voice calm despite the weight of what they were about to do. Officer Dan Phillips looked up from his console. "All ships reporting ready, sir. Formation is at 98% completion. The last battle group will be in position within 10 minutes. Jack nodded. 900,000 warships. The number still seemed unreal, even to him. For 200 years, humanity had built this fleet in secret, hidden in the shadows of gas giants, concealed in asteroid belts, and constructed in underground facilities across a dozen worlds. While the rest of the galaxy thought humans were barely managing to survive after the scorching of Earth, they had instead been preparing. "Message from Central Command, sir," called out Communications Officer Beth Ward. "The final authorization codes have been transmitted. Operation Silent Shield is officially underway." Jack took a deep breath. "Acknowledge receipt and inform all captains. We launch in 30 minutes. The command deck fell quiet as officers carried out their duties with practiced efficiency. These men and women had trained their entire lives for this moment. Some had never even set foot on Earth, born and raised on secret military stations where everything, from their education to their meals, prepared them for this mission. "Sir?" Beth's voice broke the silence, tension evident in her tone. "We're receiving transmissions from everywhere." Jack turned to her. "Explain." "Multiple species, sir. The Krell, the Duran hierarchy, even the Galactic Council itself. They're all sending diplomatic packets. Some are offering peace treaties, others military alliance. A few are simply begging." Jack walked to her station and looked at the screen filled with incoming transmission notices. "They've noticed us, then?" "Yes, sir. And they seem scared." "Good," said a new voice from the doorway. Director Emma Cole, Earth's representative to the fleet, entered the command deck. Her gray uniform bore no military insignia, but everyone knew her authority exceeded even Jack's. "Let them be afraid for once." Jack turned to her. "Director Cole, welcome aboard the Atlas." Emma nodded, her eyes scanning the various displays showing the massive fleet. "After what they did to Earth, fear is the least they deserve." 73. Years ago, the Galactic Council had deemed humanity too dangerous to leave unchecked. Without warning, alien warships had appeared in Earth's orbit, using devastating weapons to burn major cities, killing billions in what became known as the scorching. The surviving humans were expected to limp along as a broken species, perhaps surviving but never again threatening the established order of the galaxy. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had left humans alive. "We're picking up scout vessels at the edge of the system," reported Sensor Officer Tom Blake. "At least 30 different species trying to observe us. They're keeping their distance." "Let them watch," Emma said. "Let them report back what they're seeing. Let their leaders know that humanity is not just surviving. We're coming." Jack returned to the main viewport, where the endless line of warships stretched out before him. From massive dreadnoughts to agile destroyers, the fleet represented the single largest military force ever assembled. Each ship carried weapons that could level cities, and together they could reduce entire planets to ash. But that wasn't the plan. Not yet, anyway. "Message from General West's battle group," Beth announced. "They're in position and awaiting final orders." "The same for Admiral Jones and Commander Lee," added Dan. "All 3 battle groups report ready." Jack nodded. "Director, would you like to address the fleet before we depart?" Emma stepped forward to the communications station. Beth quickly set up a channel that would broadcast to all 900,000 ships simultaneously. Emma took a moment to compose herself before beginning. "Men and women of Earth's fleet, this is Director Emma Cole. Today we emerge from the shadows. For too long we have hidden our strength, building in secret while the galaxy believed us broken. They burned our cities, They slaughtered our families. They expected us to cower, to fade away, to accept our place as a footnote in galactic history. She paused, her eyes hard as stone. Today, we show them how wrong they were. Today, 900,000 ships crewed by the children of Earth will launch into the stars. We do not seek to conquer. We do not seek to destroy. We seek only what was denied to us, our rightful place among the stars, our security against those who would harm us, and justice for those we lost. Throughout the fleet, in cramped crew quarters and spacious command decks alike, humans listened in solemn silence. Each of you carries the hopes of humanity with you. Each of you represents our refusal to be extinguished. Remember your training. Remember your duty. And most importantly, remember Earth. Emma nodded to Beth, who ended the transmission. Outside, the Atlas, engines across the vast fleet began to glow with blue light. The first ships, the vanguard of destroyers and scout vessels, began to move outward, their formations precise and their movements coordinated with a level of military discipline that would send chills down the spines of those watching. All systems green, Dan reported. Fleet movement exactly on schedule. On a small moon orbiting Jupiter, a three-eyed alien observer watched through advanced optics as the human fleet began its departure. Its hands trembled as it sent an urgent message back to its homeworld. The rumors were true, it transmitted. Humans have built, I cannot even describe it, an armada unlike anything we have ever seen, and they're leaving their system. All vessels are advised to clear any potential path. Do not, I repeat, do not engage. Similar messages raced across the galaxy, from Scout to Homeworld, from Homeworld to Allies, from Allies to the Galactic Council itself. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now scrambled their own fleets, not to fight, but to retreat. The once mighty Duran hierarchy, responsible for coordinating the attack on Earth, decades ago sent a simple message to all its worlds: evacuate border colonies immediately. As the human fleet passed the orbit of Neptune, Jack looked at a small screen showing Earth, now just a pale blue dot in the distance. We're receiving a final message from Earth Command, Beth said quietly. It simply says, remember, but be better. Jack nodded slowly. Acknowledge receipt. The bridge fell silent again as the Atlas and its escorts accelerated toward the heliopause, the boundary where the solar system ended and interstellar space began. Behind them, the rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation, a display of power and precision that no species could ignore. 900,000 warships, built in secret by a species that should have been broken, now launched into the galaxy, and the galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, was silent with fear. 3 weeks after leaving Earth's solar system, the human fleet divided into 3 massive battle groups. Each group contained 300,000 warships, a force that alone would have outmatched any single species in the known galaxy. The separation occurred with mathematical precision, ships breaking formation only to smoothly transition into new ones, like a dance practiced for years. Admiral Bill Thomas commanded Battle Group Alpha, tasked with approaching the core worlds of the Stellar Coalition, the loose alliance of species that had once supported the attack on Earth. His flagship, the Horizon, led from the center of the formation as they entered the Orion Spur. Any response to our approach? Bill asked, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the tension filling the bridge. Communications Officer Gina Miller shook her head. Nothing direct, sir. We're picking up increased chatter between their worlds, but they're avoiding official contact. They're scared, said Diplomatic Officer Paul Green, studying data on his tablet. Intelligence suggests they've evacuated 3 border systems already. They're pulling back their civilians. Bill nodded slowly. He was 62 years old, one of the few senior officers who actually remembered Earth before the scorching. He had been just a boy when the alien ships appeared in the sky and rained fire down on his hometown. That memory fueled him through military academy and his rise through the ranks. They should be scared, he said quietly. But fear without understanding won't serve our purpose. Across the bridge, Officer Ryan Webb monitored the scanners. "Sir, we've got movement. A small group of ships has broken from the Praxis station ahead. 5 vessels approaching slowly." "Weapon status?" Bill asked immediately. "Passive, sir. Their weapon systems are powered down. Looks like a diplomatic vessel with escorts." Bill exchanged glances with Paul. This was unexpected. The Stellar Coalition had been radio silent since the human fleet's departure from Sol. "They're hailing us, Admiral," Gina reported, surprise evident in her voice. "On screen," Bill ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing an alien, with pale blue skin and large expressive eyes. A Tellarian, one of the more moderate species in the Coalition. "This is Ambassador Lore of the Stellar Coalition," the alien said, its translator converting its musical language to English. "I request permission to come aboard your vessel for direct talks." Bill's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, this is Admiral Thomas of Earth Fleet's Battle Group Alpha. Why should we grant your request when your coalition participated in the attack on our homeworld?" The alien's eyes lowered slightly, a gesture of shame in their culture. "The coalition made a terrible mistake 73 years ago. We followed the Council's lead without questioning their judgment. Many of us have regretted that decision for decades." "Regret doesn't rebuild cities or bring back the dead," Bill replied coldly. "No," Lore agreed. "It does not. But perhaps dialogue can prevent more cities from falling and more people, yours and ours, from dying." In the engine room of the Horizon, Chief Engineer Matt Wilson was elbow-deep in the ship's propulsion system when his assistant brought him the news about the diplomatic vessel. "They actually want to talk?" Matt asked, wiping grease from his hands. "After all this time?" "That's what I heard," replied his assistant. "They're saying the coalition has known about our fleet for months." Matt frowned. "That's impossible. We maintained complete communications blackout during construction. How could they know? No idea, but they didn't do anything about it. Just watched and waited." This troubled Matt deeply. As one of the engineers who had helped design the stealth systems for the human fleet, he took pride in their invisibility. If the aliens had known all along— "I need to check something," he said, hurrying to his workstation. He pulled up schematics of the alien surveillance network that Earth intelligence had mapped over the years. If there was a hole in their security, he needed to find it. 2 hours later, Ambassador Lore stood in the Horizon's conference room, surrounded by human officers. The contrast was striking. The tall, willowy alien with its flowing diplomatic robes facing humans in crisp military uniforms, their faces showing little emotion. "We detected your shipbuilding activities approximately 18 months ago," Lore explained, projecting a star chart showing human construction sites. "Our long-range probes identified unusual resource movements and energy signatures." "And you did nothing?" asked Bill, skepticism clear in his voice. "What could we do?" Lore's large eyes blinked slowly. "By the time we realized the scale of what humanity was building, it was already too late. Any aggressive action would have only triggered an immediate response from your forces." Paul stepped forward. "You could have informed the Galactic Council. They certainly would have attempted another attack." Lore's skin rippled slightly, a sign of discomfort. "Many in the Coalition opposed the first attack on Earth. We were overruled. The Council insisted humans were too unpredictable, too aggressive, to be allowed to develop further." "And now?" Bill asked. "Now, we see what happens when you corner a species and leave them no choice but to become exactly what you feared." Lore gestured to the viewport, where thousands of human warships were visible. "The Coalition wishes to negotiate a separate peace with humanity, independent of the Council's position." Back in his engine room, Matt had made a disturbing discovery. Pulling up communication records from alien satellites near one of their secret shipyards, he found evidence of regular surveillance. The aliens had indeed been watching them, but the strange thing was what they did with that information. Nothing. No alerts. No military buildups. Just observation. Matt immediately called. "The bridge. Admiral, I found something you need to see." While Matt shared his findings with Ship Command, Battle Groups Beta and Gamma were making their own first contacts across the galaxy. Battle Group Beta, commanded by Admiral Jane Foster, approached the Duran hierarchy's territory, the species that had led the attack on Earth. Unlike Battle Group Alpha's experience, they encountered no diplomatic vessels. The Durans were running. "They've abandoned another colony, Admiral," reported her second-in-command. "That's the fourth one. They're creating a buffer zone between us and their core worlds." Jane studied the tactical display showing Duran ships, in full retreat. "They think we're here for revenge, aren't we?" asked her officer quietly. Jane gave him a measured look. "We're here for justice and security. Revenge would make us no better than them." Meanwhile, Battle Group Gamma held position at Crossroads Station, a major trading hub where three galactic arms met. The station, normally bustling with ships from dozens of species, now floated in near emptiness, most traders having fled at news of the human approach. Commander Roy Clark watched from his flagship as a handful of brave, or desperate merchants continued their business. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the station itself." The message was simple. "The Galactic Council requests humanity's presence at an emergency session. For the first time in Council history, Earth is invited to send representatives." Back on the horizon, Ambassador Lore had finished presenting the Coalition's proposal for peace when Matt's findings were brought to Bill's attention. "Your people knew about our fleet, watched us build it, and chose not to act," Bill said, studying the evidence. "Why?" Lore's posture changed, showing what might have been resignation. "Because many of us believed we deserved whatever was coming. The attack on Earth was unconscionable. Some species in the Coalition viewed it as necessary, but others saw it as an atrocity. So you just waited for us to come for you?" "We waited to see what humans would do with such power," Lore replied. "The Council believed your kind would use it for destruction and conquest as they would have done. We hoped otherwise." Bill leaned forward. "And now that we're here, now that you see 900,000 warships at your doorstep, what do you believe now?" Lore's large eyes fixed on Bill's. "I believe that if destruction was your goal, we would already be dead. The fact that you're willing to talk gives many of us hope that perhaps the Council was wrong about humanity all along." As this conversation unfolded across all three battle groups, humans maintained their disciplined formations, their weapons ready but not active, their posture defensive rather than aggressive. The galaxy watched in tense silence, waiting to see what humanity would do with its overwhelming force. And in that silence was fear, but also for the first time, a glimmer of respect. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen a human before. Located on a massive space station at the center of the galaxy, the ancient hall had hosted representatives from thousands of species over its 10,000-year history. Today, for the first time, 3 humans stood before the curved table where the 7 elder species sat in judgment over galactic affairs. Director Emma Cole led the small human delegation, flanked by diplomatic advisor Sam Harris and military attaché Colonel Frank Moore. They stood tall, their simple gray uniforms a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ornamental armor worn by the other species present. "The Council recognizes the representatives of Earth," announced the Council leader, a Varaxi with translucent skin that barely concealed the complex network of glowing veins beneath. The hesitation before saying Earth was slight but noticeable. Emma stepped forward. "The people of Earth acknowledge the Council's recognition," she replied, following the ancient protocol perfectly, much to the surprise of the assembled delegates. Humanity had been studying the Council for decades, learning everything they could about the body that had ordered their near extinction. "We are gathered to address the unprecedented military mobilization of the human species," the Varaxi continued. 900,000 warships now travel through Council space without authorization, causing widespread concern among peaceful civilizations. Emma's face remained impassive. "Interesting. When your ships entered Earth space 73 years ago to burn our cities, I don't recall you seeking authorization." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Such direct speech was rarely heard in council proceedings. That action was a defensive measure, stated a Krell representative, its metal exoskeleton clicking as it spoke. The council determined that human expansion posed an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Based on what evidence? Emma demanded. Your history, the Krell replied. No other species has fought so many wars against itself. No other species advanced from primitive flight to space travel in less than a century. The trajectory was clear. Sam Harris stepped forward. So you punished us not for actions we had taken, but for actions you feared we might take. Meanwhile, several light years away, Lieutenant Lisa Chen moved silently through the maintenance corridors of Council Outpost Station 17. While the official human delegation attended the council meeting, Lisa had a different mission altogether. Dressed in the environmental suit of a station worker, she bypassed security systems with equipment specifically designed for this purpose. Earth intelligence had spent decades collecting data on council security protocols, and now that knowledge was being put to use. Lisa reached a data terminal and connected a small device to its access port. I'm in, she whispered into her communicator. Beginning download. Back at the council chamber, the debate continued with increasing tension. The fact remains, said a Duran representative, that humanity has built the largest military force seen in the galaxy's modern era. How are we to interpret this as anything but a threat? Colonel Moore spoke for the first time. The same way, we were expected to interpret your unprovoked attack as a matter of security. The Varaxi Council leader raised a slender hand for silence. Perhaps we can address specific concerns. Will humanity agree to limitations on its fleet movements? Perhaps a gradual disarmament process? No, Emma said simply. The chamber fell silent. No negotiations about the size or movement of our fleet, she continued. Those are non-starters. We are here to establish new terms for humanity's place in the galaxy, not to surrender our only guarantee of safety. Then what do you propose? Asked the Varaxi. First, formal acknowledgement that the attack on Earth was unjustified. Second, reparations for the billions of lives lost. Third, recognition of all human-controlled space and colonies as sovereign territory, with guarantees against future aggression. The council members looked at each other in disbelief. These were not the terms of a species seeking compromise. These were demands backed by overwhelming force. On Outpost Station 17, Lisa had downloaded terabytes of classified council data when an alarm suddenly blared. Security alert. Unauthorized access in Section 12D-B, announced the station's AI. Lisa quickly disconnected her device and placed it in a hidden compartment of her suit. She had what she came for. Now she just needed to escape. Two security officers rounded the corner ahead, tall tentacled Jaran known for their loyalty to the council. Lisa ducked into a maintenance shaft, using the station schematics memorized during her mission prep. She wasn't just an infiltration specialist, she was one of the few humans who had extensively studied Jaran physiology. She knew they could detect heat signatures but had poor vision in the blue light spectrum. Activating a small device on her belt, Lisa created a heat signature that moved in the opposite direction while her suit switched to emit only blue spectrum light. The Jarans followed the decoy, allowing her to make her way toward the extraction point. As the council meeting continued, the human battle groups maintained their positions across the galaxy. Battle Group Alpha remained near the Stellar Coalition worlds. Battle Group Beta kept the Duran hierarchy contained within their own space, and Battle Group Gamma held the strategically crucial crossroads position. Admiral Bill Thomas received an encoded transmission from the Horizon's communications officer. Sir, we've just received intelligence from Operation Looking Glass. Lieutenant Chen's mission was successful. Bill reviewed the summary of findings on a secure tablet, his expression growing grimmer with each swipe of his finger. Send this to Director Cole immediately. Priority channel. In the council chamber, Emma's secure communicator vibrated silently against her wrist. She glanced down at it briefly, then returned her attention to the council with a new coldness in her eyes. Before we continue these discussions, she said, interrupting a Krell representative mid-sentence, I'd like to ask about Project Containment. The chamber went completely still. Even the environmental system seemed to quiet. I don't know what you're referring to, the Varaxi Council leader said after a moment too long. Emma smiled without warmth. Strange. According to the files we've just acquired from your secure database, Project Containment was the code name for a plan developed not 73 years ago, but nearly 150 years ago, long before we had achieved significant space travel. She touched her tablet, and holographic images appeared above the center of the chamber. Council documents marked with the highest security classifications. These files show that the Council identified Earth as a potential disruption source during our early industrial age. You've been watching us for centuries, planning how to keep us contained. Sam stepped forward, continuing the presentation. The scorching wasn't a response to any immediate threat. It was simply the implementation of a long-standing plan to ensure that humans never joined the galactic community as equals. The council chamber erupted in shouted denials and demands to know how humans had accessed classified information. Several species representatives hurriedly left the chamber, presumably to check what other secrets might have been compromised. In the chaos, Frank leaned close to Emma. Chen's data also shows something else. Not all species supported Project E. Containment. There was significant opposition, especially from the older races. Emma nodded slightly. This aligned with what they had suspected. The council was not as unified as it appeared. When the Varaxi finally restored order, the council leaders' skin had darkened with what humans had learned was their version of anger or distress. These accusations are serious, the Varaxi said, and the manner in which you obtained this information is a clear violation of council security. Were we expected to ask politely why you tried to exterminate us? Colonel Moore asked, his military bearing never faltering. A new voice spoke up. One of the ancient Morrigan species rarely active in council politics anymore. Perhaps, the wizened creature said, it is time for truth. The young races feared what humans might become. Some of us older species remembered when we were feared for similar reasons. The chamber fell silent again as the ancient being continued. The council was wrong to attack Earth. I said so at the time, as did others, but we were overruled. Now we face the very outcome we sought to prevent, a militarized human species with both the power and the motivation to reshape the galaxy. Emma looked directly at the Morrigan representative. Yet here we stand, talking instead of firing weapons. Perhaps you misjudged not just our potential for violence, but our capacity for peace as well. Around the galaxy, as news of the confrontation at the council spread, dozens of species that had remained neutral began reaching out to human commanders. Some offered support, others requested protection, and a few even suggested alliances. The galaxy was realigning itself around the new reality. Humanity was not just a survivor of attempted genocide. It was now a power that could no longer be ignored. And in the face of humanity's restraint, the galaxy's fear began, ever so slightly, to transform into something else, hope. Captain Robert Wilson stood on the bridge of the Defender, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. 50 alien warships approached his position, weapons hot and shields raised. They belonged to the Krell Imperium, the most militaristic faction of the Galactic Council and one of the chief architects of the attack on Earth 73 years ago. All hands to battle stations, Robert ordered, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. Inform the battle group to assume defensive, formation Delta. Around the Defender, 20,000 human warships moved with practiced precision, creating a three-dimensional net that would allow overlapping fields of fire while minimizing their own vulnerability. Sir, we're being hailed. Reported communications. Officer Amy Peters. On screen. Robert replied. The main display showed a Krell commander, its metal exoskeleton gleaming under harsh lights, compound eyes unreadable. Human vessels. This is War Leader Vex of the Krell Imperium. You have encroached on sovereign Krell space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Robert's expression didn't change. War Leader, this is Captain Wilson of the Earth Fleet. We are in neutral space as defined by Galactic Council maps. We have no hostile intentions toward the Krell Imperium. Your presence here is hostility enough, the Krell replied. The human fleet threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia. A peace that didn't include us, Robert pointed out. A peace that was built on the ashes of our cities. The Krell's mandibles clicked in what intelligence reports suggested was agitation. You were judged and found wanting. The sentence was carried out. That you survived to seek revenge is merely an oversight we will now correct. Before Robert could respond, the transmission cut off. The tactical display immediately lit up as the Krell ships accelerated toward the human formation. They're powering weapons, reported Tactical Officer Greg Turner. Reading energy buildup consistent with Krell plasma cannons. Robert straightened his uniform. Hold position. Shields at maximum. Do not fire unless fired upon. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The defender could destroy the entire Krell force without assistance from the rest of the battle group. Yet, their orders were clear. Demonstrate restraint unless directly attacked. The Krell ships fired first. Brilliant blue energy lanced across space toward the human fleet. The shots impacted against advanced shields, dissipating harmlessly in flashes of light. Shields holding at 98%, reported Greg. No damage. Return fire, Robert ordered. Targeting weapons and propulsion systems only. Minimal force. The human ships responded with precision. Beam weapons struck the Krell vessels with surgical accuracy, disabling weapons emplacements and engine arrays without breaching hull integrity. Within minutes, 47 of the 50 Krell ships drifted powerless in space, unable to fight or flee. 3 Krell vessels attempting to withdraw, Greg reported. Let them go, Robert said. They can carry word of what happened here, across the galaxy, on the human colony of New Hope. Scientist Mark Evans worked in a research facility buried deep underground. He had never seen Earth, born 2 decades after the scorching, but like all humans, he carried the weight of that tragedy. Final sequence initiated, he announced to his team. Core stabilization holding at 99%. The device in the center of the laboratory pulsed with soft blue light. It wasn't much larger than a desk, yet it represented 20 years of secret research combining human innovation with reverse-engineered alien technology. If this works, said his colleague, Dr. Linda Hayes, it changes everything. Not just for us, but for everyone. Mark nodded. That's the point. The fleet bought us time. Now we need to use it wisely. The device's glow intensified as power readings climbed steadily. Many believed humanity's future depended on its massive fleet, but Mark and his team knew better. True security wouldn't come from having the biggest guns. It would come from changing the rules of the game entirely. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Atlas, Earth's military leadership was divided. General David Gray pounded the conference table. In frustration, the Krell attacked us. We should respond with overwhelming force, show them and everyone else what happens when you fire on human ships. Admiral Helen Ross shook her head. And prove them right about us? They believe we're violent and dangerous. If we obliterate their worlds after disabling their attack force, we confirm those fears. General Gray scoffed. Their fears kept them from finishing the job 73 years ago. Their fears made them watch in silence as we built our fleet. Fear works. Until it doesn't, Helen replied calmly. Fear creates desperation. Desperate enemies are the most dangerous kind. Commander Jack Reed, who had led the initial fleet deployment from Earth, entered the conference room. We've received a priority message from Captain Wilson. The Krell situation has been contained with minimal casualties on either side. Minimal casualties? General Gray repeated incredulously. They tried to destroy our ships. And we disabled their vessels without killing their crews, Jack pointed out. Already 17 species have reached out requesting meetings. They expected us to annihilate the Krell. Our restraint is confusing them. Helen smiled slightly. Good. Confusion is better than fear. Confusion makes them think. Back at the site of the confrontation, Robert oversaw the recovery operation. Human shuttles delivered emergency supplies to the disabled Krell vessels. Oxygen, medical equipment and power cells to maintain basic life support systems. "Sir?" Amy called from communications. "I'm picking up transmissions from the disabled Krell ships. They're talking to each other, trying to make sense of our actions." "What are they saying?" Robert asked. "They don't understand why we're helping them. Their military doctrine states that enemies should be destroyed when vulnerable." She looked up. "They think it's a trick." Robert smiled grimly. "It's not a trick. It's just not their way." Halfway across the galaxy, 3 small diplomatic vessels approached Battle Group Beta. They carried representatives from species that had once been bitter enemies of each other, now united by a common concern. Admiral Jane Foster received the delegation in the Horizons conference room. "Welcome aboard. I admit I'm surprised to see the Navarre and the Trell in the same delegation. Your peoples have been at war for centuries." The Navarre representative, a tall being with iridescent scales, bowed slightly. "Circumstances change, Admiral. The Krell have long been our protectors against Trell aggression, but the Krell are now preoccupied with humanity. We face raiders along our trade routes," added the Trell diplomat, its feathered crest rising in agitation. "Pirates who know the Krell fleet has been diverted to confront humans." Jane studied them both. "And you're coming to us for what exactly?" The third representative from a small species called the Mikar stepped forward. "Protection, Admiral. We seek the protection of the human fleet against those who would exploit the current chaos." In the council chamber, debates raged about how to respond to both the human fleet and the growing defections from traditional alliances. The Varaxi council leaders struggled to maintain order as accusations flew between representatives. "The Stellar Coalition has betrayed us," shouted the Krell representative. "They negotiate with humans while our ships lie crippled." "Perhaps if you hadn't attacked them unprovoked," replied the Coalition ambassador, "you wouldn't need our help now." Director Emma Cole watched the proceedings with Sam Harris and Colonel Frank Moore, observing the fracturing of alliances that had stood for centuries. "It's happening faster than we anticipated," Sam whispered. "The power balance is shifting." Emma nodded. "Fear of what we might do is being replaced by calculation of what we might offer." Frank gestured subtly toward a group of representatives from smaller species huddled in discussion. "They're forming new blocks, trying to position themselves in the new order. An order we haven't even established yet," Emma noted. As the argument in the chamber intensified, a message arrived for Emma. She read it, then showed it to her colleagues. It contained just 3 words from Mark Evans on New Hope Colony. "It works. Confirmed." Emma's expression remained neutral, but her eyes betrayed a flash of hope. She stood, silencing the chamber with the simple act. "The people of Earth have observed these proceedings with interest," she announced. "We see old alliances breaking, and new ones forming. We see fear giving way to opportunity." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled representatives. "Humanity did not build its fleet for conquest or revenge, though many of you assumed we did. We built it so that we would never again be vulnerable, so that we could engage with the galaxy from a position of strength, not weakness." The Varaxi council leader tilted his head. "What are you proposing, Director Cole?" "A new foundation for galactic relations, one based not on fear or power, but on mutual security and respect." Emma's voice carried throughout the chamber. "Humanity extends an invitation to any species who wishes to discuss such arrangements." As her words echoed through the council chamber, across the galaxy, the human fleet maintained its defensive posture. 900,000 ships built for war but exercising peace, their very presence rewriting the rules of a game that had excluded humanity for too long. And in his laboratory on New Hope, Mark Evans watched his device continue to function perfectly, a Deo, technology that could render the weapons of war obsolete if the galaxy was ready for such a gift. The silence of fear was breaking, replaced by the first cautious words of something new. The massive human fleet moved into position around the Galactic Council headquarters, a breathtaking display of coordination that took 14 hours to complete. 900,000 warships arranged themselves in concentric spheres there, formation not threatening but protective, a living shield surrounding the ancient space station where the fate of countless civilizations would be decided. Admiral Helen Ross stood on the bridge of the Atlas, humanity's flagship, watching as the final vessel slid into place. Her gray uniform bore the simple insignia of Earth Fleet Command, nothing more elaborate than what any other officer wore. Humans had learned long ago that true power needed no ornamentation. "Formation complete, Admiral," reported her second-in-command. "All ships report ready." Helen nodded. "Begin the broadcast." Throughout the galaxy, on every inhabited world and space station, communication systems activated simultaneously. Earth Fleet had spent decades mapping the galaxy's information networks, and now they used that knowledge to ensure everyone, from the elder species to the smallest colony, would hear humanity's message. Director Emma Cole appeared on billions of screens, her expression calm and determined. Behind her stood representatives from Earth's government, military, and scientific communities. "People of the galaxy," she began, "I speak to you today not as a conqueror, but as a survivor. 73 years ago, the Galactic Council determined that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to develop naturally. Their response was to burn our cities and slaughter billions of our people." Images of the scorching appeared. Earth's cities in flames, refugees fleeing across ruined landscapes, raw footage that humans had preserved as a reminder of what had been done to them. We were expected to fade away, a broken species clinging to a damaged world. Instead, we rebuilt. We remembered, and we prepared. The broadcast showed the human fleet surrounding the council station, the scale of it stunning even to those who had already heard rumors of its size. "Today we could do to others what was done to us. We have the power to burn worlds, to reduce civilizations to ashes. There are some among us who argued we should do exactly that." The broadcast cut to scenes from recent events, the disabled Krell ships receiving aid from human vessels, diplomatic meetings with former enemies, the council chamber where humanity had revealed the truth about Project Containment. But humanity chooses a different path. We did not build this fleet for revenge. We built it so that we would never again be victims, so that we could speak to the galaxy not from a position of weakness, but from one of strength. Inside the council chamber, representatives from 217 species waited in tense silence. Some had been humanity's persecutors, others merely bystanders, and a growing number had become recent allies. Emma stood before them in person now, having transferred from the broadcast studio to the chamber. "Humanity's terms are simple," she announced. "First, the immediate dissolution of the current Galactic Council structure, which has proven itself unworthy of its authority." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives, but no one dared object with 900,000 human warships surrounding them. Second, the establishment of a new galactic assembly where all spacefaring species hold equal standing, including Earth. The Varaxi Council leader rose from his seat. "And if we refuse? Then each species will need to negotiate separate terms with humanity," Emma replied calmly. "Many already have. The Stellar Coalition, the Navarre Conclave, the Trell Dominion, all have signed preliminary agreements with Earth. The old order is already crumbling. We're simply offering a framework for what comes next." On the colony world of New Hope, scientist Mark Evans prepared for his journey to the council station. The device his team had created, now confirmed functional and stable, was secured in a specially designed container. "Are you sure about this?" asked Linda Hayes, his colleague. "Giving them this technology now could be premature." Mark checked. The container's seals one final time. "Director Cole believes the timing is perfect. If we're asking the galaxy to trust us, we need to show trust in return." "But this technology, it changes everything." "That's the point," Mark said with a slight smile. "The fleet got their attention. This will keep it." Throughout the next week, representatives worked tirelessly to draft the founding documents of the new Galactic Assembly. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together, united by the reality that the human fleet had fundamentally altered the balance of power. Admiral Helen Ross supervised the deployment of human defense outposts at key points throughout the galaxy. These stations, each guarded by a contingent of warships, established safe zones where smaller, vulnerable species could conduct trade without fear of piracy or aggression from stronger neighbors. The Mikar trading fleet reports safe passage through the Antares sector, an officer reported. They send their thanks. Helen nodded. For centuries, the Mikar had paid crippling protection fees to the Krell. Now they traveled under human protection, not free of charge, but at a fraction of what the Krell had demanded. And the Duran shipyards? She asked. Converting to civilian production is agreed. Our inspectors confirm 20% of their military vessels have been decommissioned. Helen allowed herself a small smile. The Duran hierarchy, once among humanity's most vicious enemies, had been the first to recognize the new reality. Their military reduction was voluntary, technically. The alternative would have been facing the human fleet with their outdated ships. On the 8th day, Mark Evans arrived at the council station with his precious cargo. He was escorted directly to the main chamber, where the final provisions of the new assembly charter were being discussed. Emma Cole greeted him with a nod, then turned to address the gathered representatives. Before we conclude these historic proceedings, humanity wishes to offer a demonstration of our commitment to the new order we are establishing together. She gestured to Mark, who stepped forward with his container. This device represents 20 years of research by Earth's top scientists, Emma explained. It combines principles we developed independently with knowledge gained from studying technology from various species. Mark opened the container, revealing a device that pulsed with soft blue light. It was surprisingly small, no larger than a desk, for something that would change the course of galactic history. This is what we call a harmonic shield generator, Mark said, activating the device. A holographic display appeared above it showing the technical specifications. When deployed in a network, these generators create an energy field that neutralizes all weapons fire within its range. The representatives murmured in disbelief. We've tested it against every weapon system known to us, including our own, Mark continued. Energy weapons, projectiles, explosives, all rendered harmless. The shield doesn't stop ships or communication, only hostile actions. The Krell representative rose from his seat. Why would you share such technology? It negates the very military advantage you've built. Emma stepped forward again. Because true security doesn't come from having the biggest fleet or the most powerful weapons. It comes from creating a system where such things are no longer necessary. She addressed the entire chamber. Humanity will begin installing these generators around Earth and our colonies. But we also offer this technology to the Galactic Assembly, to be deployed for the protection of all worlds that join our new compact. The implications were enormous. Species that had invested countless resources in military technology, suddenly, faced a future where those investments might be rendered obsolete. Yet at the same time, smaller civilizations that had lived in constant fear of their more powerful neighbors saw a path to true security. Over the following months, the human fleet began a gradual transformation. While maintaining its size and readiness, many vessels were converted to serve other functions: scientific exploration, disaster response, and peacekeeping. Battle Group Alpha, under Admiral Bill Thomas, established the first joint human-alien defense force incorporating ships from 12 former enemy species. Their first mission was protecting refugee convoys fleeing a stellar collapse in the Cygnus Arm. Battle Group Beta, led by Admiral Jane Foster, began the first deep space exploration mission beyond the known galaxy, inviting scientists from all member species of the new assembly to participate. And Battle Group Gamma, commanded by Captain Robert Wilson, oversaw the installation of the first network of harmonic shield generators around the assembly headquarters, symbolic protection for the new galactic order. 1 year after the human fleet had left Earth's solar system, Director Emma Cole stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly. The hall, once the exclusive domain of the elder species, now hosted representatives from all spacefaring civilizations, including dozens that had never been permitted to join the old council. We began this journey seeking justice and security, she told the assembled delegates. We found that true security comes not from inspiring fear, but from building trust. Throughout the galaxy, the human fleet remained, still the largest military force ever assembled, still ready to defend Earth against any threat. But its purpose had evolved. What had been built as an instrument of potential vengeance had become a foundation for peace. The galaxy was no longer silent with fear. Instead, it spoke with many voices in the assembly hall, debating, disagreeing, but no longer dominated by the powerful few. And humanity, once nearly extinguished, had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as architects of a new order where strength protected the weak and ancient enemies learned to become reluctant allies. 900,000 ships had launched from Earth. They had achieved their purpose without firing a shot in anger. The greatest victory humanity had discovered was not defeating an enemy, but transforming one into a friend. The massive central hall of the Galactic Alliance headquarters buzzed with the noise of 100 different species. Lights from the 3 moons of Centauri Prime shimmered through the crystal dome above. At the far end of the hall, Earth's delegation stood awkwardly in their simple blue uniforms, clearly out of place among the ornate garments of the older spacefaring races. Commander Jack Stone shifted his weight from one foot to another. He had been standing at attention for nearly 2 hours, as speeches droned on in the common galactic language. At 45, Stone was considered young for his position, with short gray-peppered hair and deep lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting at distant stars. "And now," announced the chief ambassador, a tall being with silvery skin, "we welcome our newest members, the humans of Earth, to present their contribution to our combined fleet." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 3 months ago, after humans had accidentally discovered faster-than-light travel while experimenting with fusion technology. The older races viewed humans as lucky, children who had stumbled onto the galactic stage before they were ready. Stone walked to the central platform with his head held high. Behind him, a large screen activated, showing an image that made several aliens gasp or make sounds of surprise. "I present the Earth Defense Vessel Reclaimer," Stone said proudly, "designated JF-07. The ship on the screen looked like it had been assembled by a child playing with mismatched toys. Its hull was clearly made from different metals welded together. One section appeared to be an old Earth satellite repurposed as a sensor array. Another part looked like salvaged pieces from an early moon base. Even the engines seemed to be different models grafted together in a way that defied conventional engineering. Silence filled the hall until a loud, rumbling laugh broke it. Admiral Krell, commander of the Galactic Fleet, stepped forward. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with blue-gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly yellow, Krell was an imposing figure from the warrior race of Torno. His uniform gleamed with medals and honors earned over 3 centuries of service. "You can't be serious," Krell said, his translator barely keeping up with his rumbling voice. "This junkyard collection is your military contribution?" Stone's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "The Reclaimer may not look impressive, Admiral, but she's faster and more adaptable than you might think." "Adaptable?" Krell laughed again, louder this time. Other delegates joined in. "It looks like it would fall apart if it tried to reach half-light speed." Stone had expected mockery. Earth was still new to space travel and resources were limited. They had built what they could with what they had. "Appearances can be deceiving, Admiral." Krell stepped closer, towering over Stone. "Let me be clear, human. The Galactic Alliance has standards. That pile of scrap you call a ship would be a liability in any real conflict. It might be good enough for your primitive solar system, but out here, it's worse than useless." The hall had grown quiet again. The Earth delegation shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps," Stone said carefully, "you'd allow us to demonstrate the Reclaimer's capabilities." A thin smile spread across Krell's face. "As it happens, the Alliance is conducting war games next month to test our readiness. Originally, we weren't going to invite Earth to participate, as you clearly have nothing to contribute." He gestured toward the screen where the Reclaimer still hung awkwardly in space. "But I'm feeling generous today. Bring your, ship. It will serve as an excellent target for our gunners." Laughter erupted again, louder this time. Stone felt heat rising in his face but kept his expression neutral. We accept your invitation, Admiral. Krell's smile faltered slightly. He had expected Stone to back down. Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you when your crew is floating home in escape pods. After the ceremony ended, Stone met with his team in a small room provided for the Earth delegation. The mood was grim. They laughed at us, said Anna Miller, the Reclaimer's pilot. At 32, she was the youngest senior officer on the crew, with short blonde hair and quick eyes that constantly scanned her surroundings. Before joining Earth's space program, she had been a champion in experimental aircraft racing. Let them laugh, Stone replied. It won't matter when they see what we can do. Tom Reed, the ship's chief engineer, scratched his beard thoughtfully. Older than Stone by a decade, Reed had spent his life making broken things work. His hands were permanently stained with engine grease. The Reclaimer isn't ready for war games, Jack. We're still testing the new power coupling system. Then we'll have to get her ready, Stone said firmly. We have 1 month. With all due respect, sir, said Ben Davis, the science officer. Admiral, Krell wasn't wrong about everything. Tall and thin with careful movements, Davis had been a theoretical physicist before joining the space program. Our ship is built from salvaged parts. Some of the technology is decades old. Stone moved to the window overlooking the spaceport where ships from dozens of worlds sat in neat rows. Among them, looking distinctly out of place, was the Reclaimer. In the fading light of the setting suns, its patchwork construction was even more obvious. Do you know why I named her the Reclaimer? Stone asked. When no one answered, he continued, because humans have always excelled at taking what others discard and making something new, something unexpected. He turned back to his team. The Galactic Alliance sees us as primitive upstarts who got lucky with faster-than-light travel. They're right that we're behind in technology, but they're wrong about our capabilities. Reed nodded slowly. The modifications I've been working on, they're unconventional, but they might give us an edge. My simulator results suggest we can execute maneuvers their targeting systems won't predict, Miller added, a spark of excitement in her voice. And I've been studying their battle formations, Davis said. They follow patterns they don't even recognize themselves. Stone smiled. This was why he had chosen this crew. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The Alliance races have been at peace so long they've forgotten how to truly innovate. They follow rules and traditions that are centuries old. He looked at each of them in turn. We have 1 month to turn our pile of scrap into something that will shock the entire Galactic Alliance. Let's get to work. The next morning, as the Earth delegation prepared to return to their ship, a young aide from Admiral Krell's staff approached Stone. Commander, the aide said nervously. Admiral Krell wished me to provide you with the coordinates and protocols for the war games. Stone took the offered data tablet. Thank the Admiral for his consideration. The aide hesitated. He also asked me to remind you that the Alliance will not be responsible for any structural failures your vessel might experience during the exercises. Tell the Admiral not to worry about us, Stone replied. We'll be ready. As the aide hurried away, Stone looked up at the vast ceiling of the spaceport, where ships of all designs moved smoothly through docking procedures. Far above, barely visible against the bright sky, the bulky form of Admiral Krell's flagship, the Dominant, hung in orbit. Laugh all you want, Stone muttered to himself. You won't be laughing for long. The Reclaimer hung in Earth's orbit, its patchwork hull gleaming in the sunlight. From a distance, it looked even more like a collection of spare parts than it had on the display screens at the Galactic Alliance headquarters. Up close, the welds and seams between different sections were clearly visible, telling the story of its hurried construction. Inside the ship's main engineering bay, Tom Reed lay on his back beneath an open panel, his face illuminated by the glow of fusion circuits. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he carefully adjusted a connection that no engineering manual would ever recommend. Hand me the pulse shifter, he called out, extending his hand without looking. A woman in a mechanic's jumpsuit, Lisa Wright, placed the tool in his waiting palm. This is crazy, Tom. Mixing Centaurian power couplings with our old fusion tech. It could blow up the whole ship. Reed slid out from under the panel with a grunt. His once white shirt was now smeared with grease and coolant fluid. That's exactly what the Galactic folks would say. That's why they'd never try it. He grinned. And that's why they'll never see it coming. Commander Stone entered the engineering bay, ducking under a low-hanging pipe. The reclaimer had not been designed with comfort in mind, and at least a third of the corridors required tall crew members to stoop. "How's it coming, Tom?" Stone asked, looking at the mess of wiring and components spread across the floor. Reed wiped his hands on a rag. "I've got the hybrid power system working, sort of. We can now channel power between our Earth fusion generators and the Centaurian energy matrices we salvaged from that derelict scout ship." "Sort of?" Stone raised an eyebrow. "Well, it won't." "Explode, probably." Reed smiled. "But it gives us something unique. The Galactic ships all use standardized power systems. They're efficient, stable, and predictable. Ours is none of those things. But it can do something theirs can't." "Which is?" Reed's eyes lit up with excitement. "Pulse shifting. We can create energy fluctuations that will make us appear to be in slightly different positions than we actually are. Their targeting computers will get confused." Stone nodded slowly. "How long until it's combat ready?" 3 weeks, maybe, if we work around the clock." "You have 2, Stone said firmly. "The war games start in 29 days and we need time for testing." Reed sighed. "I'll need more help then, and parts. You'll have them." Stone turned to leave but stopped. "Oh, and Tom, make sure it really won't explode." "No promises, Commander," Reed called after him with a chuckle. In the simulator room 2 decks above, Anna Miller sat in a replica of the reclaimer's cockpit, her hands dancing over the controls. On the screen in front of her, a virtual representation of the ship performed a series of maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Stone watched from the doorway as the simulated ship spun on its axis while continuing forward momentum, then cut its engines only to reignite them in a pattern that looked almost random. After a particularly impossible-looking turn, Miller removed her simulator helmet and noticed Stone. "Commander, I didn't see you there." "What was that last move?" Stone asked, pointing to the replay on a secondary screen. "I've never seen anything like it." Miller's face lit up. "I call it the broken arrow. It only works because of our uneven weight distribution and Tom's adjustable thruster output." She pointed to different parts of the ship diagram. "A normal ship would tear itself apart trying this, but the reclaimer, she's already a bit broken, so she can bend in ways other ships can't." "Will it work in actual combat?" Miller nodded, confidently. "The Galactic ships are all designed with perfect balance and symmetry. Their combat computers predict movement based on those principles. They won't know how to target something that moves like it's falling apart." "Keep working on it," Stone said. "I want a full set of these unorthodox maneuvers ready for combat drills next week." "Yes, sir," Miller replied, already reaching for her helmet to continue practice. Stone made his way to the science lab, where Ben Davis stood before a large display showing recordings of Galactic Fleet exercises. Davis didn't notice Stone enter. He was too focused on the movements of the ships on the screen. "Found anything useful?" Stone asked. Davis jumped slightly, then adjusted his glasses. "Commander, yes, actually. Look at this." He pointed to the formation of ships on the display. "The Galactic Fleet has been using the same basic tactics for over 200 years. They value tradition and proven methods." "That makes them predictable," Stone observed. "Exactly," Davis agreed. "They follow patterns they don't even realize are patterns. For instance, their ships always approach in these specific formations." He pulled up another display. "And when they attack, they follow standard protocols taught at their academy." Davis tapped a few controls and a simulation began to run, showing how the reclaimer might exploit these patterns. "If we know what they're going to do before they do it, we can position ourselves to surprise them." Stone nodded approvingly. "Keep analyzing. I want counter tactics for every standard galactic maneuver." As Stone left the science lab, his communication device beeped. The face of General Harris, Earth's military liaison to the Galactic Alliance, appeared on the small screen. "Commander, we have a situation," Harris said without preamble. Our intelligence suggests that Admiral Krell has assigned spies to observe your preparations. Stone frowned. Inside the ship? No, but they're watching from orbit. A small galactic vessel has been stationed just outside Earth's security perimeter. They're scanning your ship. Stone thought for a moment. Let them watch, General. In fact, I have an idea. The next day, Reed directed a team to begin work on the outer hull of the Reclaimer. They attached what appeared to be additional armor plating and new weapon systems. From a distance, it looked like a significant upgrade. Are those real weapons? Stone asked as he and Reed observed the work from a viewport. Reed grinned. They're empty shells. But they look impressive, don't they? Our galactic friends will waste time analyzing weapons that don't exist while we finish the real modifications inside. Stone clapped Reed on the shoulder. Good thinking. Later that evening, Stone called his senior officers to the ship's small briefing room. The walls were bare metal, unlike the elegant meeting chambers of galactic vessels. We have 25 days left, Stone began. Our galactic friends are watching us, thinking they know what we're doing. Let them think that. Meanwhile, I want each of you to push harder. This isn't just about proving ourselves at the war games anymore. He activated a display showing a classified intelligence report. Our long-range sensors detected unusual activity at the edge of Alliance space. The Galactic Council is ignoring it, but I'm not taking chances. There's a possibility that while we're playing at war, a real threat might be approaching. The room fell silent as the officers processed this information. Are you saying the war games might turn real? Miller asked. Stone's expression was grim. I'm saying we need to be ready for anything. The galactic races have been at peace so long they've forgotten what real danger looks like. We humans haven't had that luxury. He looked at each of his officers in turn. We have 25 days to turn this scrap ship into something that can not only surprise our galactic friends, but possibly save them as well. Let's get to work. As the meeting ended, Stone remained behind, looking at the star chart displaying the mysterious readings at the edge of known space. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones, the way sailors of old could sense a storm on the horizon. The Reclaimer might be a patchwork of salvaged parts, but it was Earth's best hope. And now possibly the Alliance's too, whether they knew it or not. The vast emptiness of space around Jupiter's orbit had been transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Over 200 ships from across the Galactic Alliance hung in precise formation, their sleek designs reflecting the distant sunlight. Among them, looking distinctly out of place, was the Earth vessel Reclaimer. From the command deck of the imposing Dominant, Admiral Krell watched the Earth ship with a mixture of amusement and contempt. Even with its apparent new modifications, the Reclaimer looked like a child's toy next to the massive warships of the main fleet. They actually showed up, Krell remarked to his second-in-command, a tall, thin officer named Mex. I was half expecting them to find an excuse to back out. Humans are known for their stubbornness, Admiral, Mex replied. Though I admit, bringing that heap of metal into a combat exercise shows either great courage or complete foolishness. Krell nodded. Assign them to target practice group. They might as well serve some purpose before they're forced to withdraw. Inside the Reclaimer, Commander Stone and his crew were making final preparations. The ship hummed with an uneven energy that would have alarmed any galactic engineer but felt just right to the humans, who had spent the last month fine-tuning it. All systems are as ready as they'll ever be, Reed reported from his engineering station. His voice carried the weariness of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. The hybrid power system is stable. Well, stable enough. Miller sat at the pilot's controls, her fingers dancing across the panel as she ran through pre-maneuver checks. Flight systems responding. All those simulator hours better pay off. They will, Stone assured her. He turned to Davis at the science station. What's our assignment? Davis frowned as he read the incoming transmission. We've been assigned to target practice group, sir. Essentially, we're supposed to act as moving targets for the main fleet's weapons drills. A murmur of discontent spread through the bridge. Crew. Stone's face remained calm. Perfect. They're underestimating us even more than I'd hoped. He opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is Commander Stone. The war games begin in 30 minutes. Remember your training, remember why we're here, and remember that every person who laughed at our ship is watching. Let's show them what humans can do. The first exercise was simple. The target practice group would attempt to evade simulated weapons fire from the main fleet for 10 minutes. Any ship hit 3 times would be considered destroyed and would have to withdraw. 5 alliance ships from minor worlds made up the rest of the target group. They all carried the standard design elements of galactic vessels, smooth lines, perfect symmetry, and conventional propulsion systems. The exercise began with a signal from the dominant. Immediately, the 5 alliance ships began evasive maneuvers, following textbook patterns taught at the Galactic Academy. The reclaimer, however, did nothing. It simply drifted, appearing almost dead in space. "What are they doing?" Krell asked, leaning forward in his command chair. "Have they had a system failure already?" From a tactical station, an officer replied, "Their power readings are fluctuating, Admiral. They may be experiencing problems." Krell smiled. "Target them first. Put them out of their misery." 3 galactic cruisers turned their targeting systems toward the seemingly helpless Earth vessel. The computers calculated the simple trajectory and fired simulated weapons. According to every prediction model, the shots would score direct hits. But, at the last possible second, the reclaimer's engines flared to life in an erratic pattern. The ship didn't just move, it jerked sideways in a motion that looked like a mechanical failure, but was precisely calculated. All 3 shots missed. On the reclaimer's bridge, Miller grinned as she executed the maneuver she had practiced hundreds of times in simulation. "Broken arrow successful. They missed by a mile." Stone nodded approvingly. "Now show them the falling star." Miller's hands flew over the controls. The reclaimer suddenly cut all forward thrusters and appeared to tumble end over end. The galactic targeting computers predicted it would continue this tumble and fired accordingly. But Miller fired the port thrusters in a pattern that made no conventional sense. The ship lurched in a completely unexpected direction, evading all incoming fire. On the dominant, confusion was spreading among the tactical officers. "Sir, we can't get a lock," reported the weapons officer. "Their movements don't follow any recognizable pattern." Krell frowned deeply. "Assign 2 more cruisers to target them. They're just getting lucky." Back on the reclaimer, Reed was working frantically at his engineering station. "Power fluctuations are within tolerable limits, but the starboard couplings are heating up faster than expected," he reported. "We can maintain this level of maneuvering for another 7 minutes at most." "That's all we need," Stone replied. "Anna, time for the next phase." Miller nodded and initiated a sequence they had called the Phantom Echo. Thanks to Reed's modified power system, the reclaimer began emitting energy signatures that confused the galactic sensors, making the ship appear to be slightly offset from its actual position. On the Dominant's tactical display, the reclaimer seemed to split into 2 overlapping images. "What's happening?" Krell demanded. "Is that some kind of sensor malfunction?" The tactical officer shook his head in confusion. "The sensors are working correctly, Admiral. Somehow they're creating a false reading. I've never seen anything like it." Krell's face darkened. "Target both images. Fire everything we have." A barrage of simulated fire headed toward the reclaimer, enough to destroy any ship 3 times over. But Miller executed a series of impossible maneuvers, while Reed pushed the power system to its limits, creating phantom sensor readings that scattered in different directions. Every shot missed. Davis, monitoring the galactic communications channels, smiled broadly. "Sir, the other ships in our group have all been eliminated, but we haven't taken a single hit. We've lasted the full 10 minutes. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Stone allowed himself a small smile but raised his hand for quiet. "This is just the first exercise. They'll adapt. Be ready for Phase 2. As the reclaimer rejoined the fleet formation, communication channels buzzed with chatter about the Earth ship's unexpected performance. Several captains from smaller worlds transmitted messages of congratulations while the major powers remained noticeably silent. Admiral Krell was furious. He paced the bridge of the Dominant, his face flushed a deeper blue than usual. It was a fluke, he insisted, a combination of luck and our gunner's complacency. The next exercise will be different. For the second exercise, the fleet was divided into two opposing forces for a simulated battle. Naturally, Krell assigned the reclaimer to the weaker side, commanded by junior officers. The commander of this secondary force, Captain Lorix of the Pleiades systems, initially regarded the Earth ship with skepticism. But after witnessing its performance in the first exercise, he contacted Stone directly. "Commander, your ship's capabilities are unexpected," Lorix admitted. "I would like to incorporate your unique abilities into our battle plan." Stone nodded respectfully. "We would be honored, Captain. We have some suggestions that might surprise the opposing force." When the second exercise began, the main fleet expected a conventional approach from the secondary force. Instead, the reclaimer took point position, using its strange energy signature to confuse the enemy sensors. Behind it, the other ships of the secondary force arranged themselves in a formation that Davis had designed based on his analysis of galactic blind spots. The result was devastating. The reclaimer darted and weaved through the enemy formation, drawing fire and confusing targeting systems. Meanwhile, the ships following in its wake scored hit after hit on the distracted enemy vessels. Within 15 minutes, the exercise was over. The secondary force had achieved a victory that should have been impossible according to all galactic military doctrine. As the ships regrouped for the next exercise, Admiral Krell's voice came over the common channel, tight with barely controlled anger. "Attention all vessels. There has been a change to the exercise parameters. For the remaining drills, all ships will use standard galactic maneuvering protocols only. Any unorthodox tactics are now forbidden." Stone exchanged looks with his bridge crew. Reed rolled his eyes while Miller made a rude gesture toward the communication panel that thankfully wasn't being transmitted. "He's changing the rules," Davis said quietly. Stone nodded. "Because we're winning." He opened a channel to respond. "Admiral Krell, Commander Stone here. We respectfully request clarification. The purpose of these exercises is to test combat readiness. In real combat, the enemy won't follow standard protocols." There was a long pause before Krell responded. "The purpose of these exercises is to ensure all Alliance members can function as part of a cohesive fleet. Your improvisations disrupt unit cohesion. Follow the protocols or withdraw from the exercises." Stone muted the channel and turned to his crew. "Options?" Reed shrugged. "We could comply and still do reasonably well. Our ship is more responsive than they realize, even with conventional maneuvers. Or," Miller added with a gleam in her eye, "we could push the boundaries of what counts as standard protocols." Stone smiled slowly. "Let's find out exactly how far those boundaries stretch." The war games continued, and though the reclaimer was now forced to operate within more restricted parameters, it still performed far better than anyone had expected. By the end of the day, several galactic captains had approached Stone to learn more about Earth's shipbuilding techniques. As the fleet prepared to dock at the Jovian station for the night cycle, Stone received an unexpected communication. It was from Captain Lorix. "Commander Stone, your ship and crew have earned my respect. Today, some of us are gathering to discuss tomorrow's exercises. I believe you would have valuable input. Will you join us?" Stone looked around at his tired but proud crew. "It seems we've made some friends after all." Reed grinned. "Better enjoy it while it lasts, Commander. Something tells me Admiral Krell is already planning how to put us in our place tomorrow." Stone nodded. "Let him try." The second day of war games dawned with a tense atmosphere throughout the fleet. The reclaimer's unexpected success had disturbed the comfortable hierarchies of the Galactic Alliance. Junior officers from smaller worlds looked at the Earthship with newfound respect, while the major powers regarded it with suspicion. Commander Stone had spent the previous evening with Captain Lorix and several other officers who had shown interest in the reclaimer's performance. The meeting had been productive, with Stone sharing some of Earth's more conventional tactical innovations while carefully guarding their true secrets. Now, as the fleet prepared for the day's exercises, Stone stood on the reclaimer's bridge feeling cautiously optimistic. Admiral Krell had scheduled a complex simulation involving defense against a hypothetical invasion force, exactly the kind of scenario where the Reclaimer's unusual capabilities might shine despite the new restrictions. All systems nominal, Reed reported from engineering. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his lack of sleep, but his voice was steady. I've adjusted the power couplings to run cooler today. We should be able to maintain full maneuverability for up to 20 minutes at a time. Miller nodded from the pilot station. I've studied the standard protocols all night. There's more flexibility than Krell thinks. We can still surprise them. Davis, however, wasn't listening. He stood hunched over his science station, frowning at the readings on his display. "Commander," he called, "I'm picking up something strange at the edge of our sensor range." Stone moved to his side. "Explain." Davis pointed to a series of energy spikes on his display. "These readings, they're not part of the exercise. They're coming from beyond Pluto's orbit, from real ships that aren't broadcasting Alliance identification codes." Stone's expression darkened. "Could it be the anomaly our long-range sensors detected a month ago?" "It matches the pattern," Davis confirmed, "but it's much stronger now. Whatever it is, it's getting closer." Stone didn't hesitate. "Open a channel to the dominant." After a brief delay, Admiral Krell's face appeared on the communication screen. His expression was one of annoyed impatience. "Commander Stone, the exercises begin in 15 minutes. I trust you're ready to follow proper protocols today?" "Admiral," Stone said, ignoring the jab, "our sensors have detected unknown vessels approaching from beyond Pluto's orbit. They're not broadcasting Alliance codes." Krell's expression didn't change. "Our sensors show nothing unusual. Perhaps your patchwork technology is malfunctioning." "Sir," Stone insisted, "we've been tracking an anomaly in this region for over a month." "These readings are consistent with—" "Enough," Krell interrupted. "This is clearly an attempt to disrupt today's exercises or to justify more of your unorthodox maneuvers. It won't work. Maintain your position and await further instructions." The communication ended abruptly. Stone stood silent for a moment, then turned to his crew. "Continue monitoring those readings, if they are what I think they are." Before he could finish, Davis straightened suddenly. "Sir, the readings just intensified dramatically. Multiple objects just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're accelerating toward the fleet." Stone didn't waste time trying to contact Krell again. "Sound General Quarters. Battle stations." Alarms blared throughout the Reclaimer as the crew rushed to prepare for potential combat. On the main view screen, Davis projected the sensor readings, showing numerous objects approaching rapidly from the outer solar system. "Can we identify them?" Stone asked. Davis worked frantically at his console. "Comparing to all known ship designs. Wait, there's a match in the Galactic database." His face paled. "Sir, they're Razak vessels." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Razak were a hostile species that had waged war against the Galactic Alliance nearly 50 years earlier. According to official reports, they had been contained within their own region of space by an Alliance blockade. Apparently, those reports had been wrong. "How many?" Stone asked quietly. "At least 30 ships," Davis replied. "Mostly cruiser class, but I'm detecting 3 dreadnought-sized vessels as well." Stone opened a fleet-wide emergency channel. "Attention all Alliance vessels. This is Commander Stone of the Earthship Reclaimer. Our sensors have detected a Razak battle group approaching at high speed. This is not an exercise. Repeat, this is not an exercise. All ships prepare for possible hostile action." For several long seconds there was no response. Then the communication system exploded with chatter as other ships began picking up the approaching vessels on their own sensors. Admiral Krell's voice cut through the chaos. "All ships maintain exercise formation. This is clearly some kind of sensor ghost or malfunction." He was interrupted by a brilliant flash of light as a beam of energy lanced through space, striking one of the outer Alliance cruisers. The ship's shields flared briefly, then collapsed as the vessel broke apart. Stunned silence filled the communication channels, broken only by emergency beacons from the destroyed cruiser. Then chaos erupted. The Galactic fleet, still configured, for war games rather than actual combat, scrambled to respond. Ships collided as they tried to turn to face the threat. Weapons powered up slowly, having been set to training levels. "They're completely unprepared," Stone murmured. Then, louder, "Reed, full power to all systems. Miller, get us clear of this mess. Davis, keep tracking those Razak ships. Find me a pattern." The Reclaimer's engines flared to life, and the ship darted away from the confused mass of Alliance vessels. Unlike the Galactic ships, the Reclaimer had maintained full combat readiness throughout the exercises, partly from caution, partly because its jury-rigged systems couldn't easily be scaled down for training purposes. More energy beams sliced through space as the Razak fleet opened fire. 3 more Alliance ships were hit, their shields failing almost instantly against the powerful weapons. Admiral Krell's voice came over the command channel again, this time lacking its usual arrogance. "All vessels, combat formation Delta, priority, is to protect the civilian observation ships." But it was too late for an orderly response. The Alliance ships struggled to form up, their movements hampered by decades of peace and reliance on standard protocols that now failed them in the face of unexpected attack. The Reclaimer, meanwhile, moved with purpose. Stone had Davis analyzing the Razak attack pattern while Miller steered them clear of the main battle. "Sir," Davis called, "I've identified their command ship, the largest dreadnought. It's coordinating their attack formation." Stone studied the tactical display. The Razak ships moved with frightening precision, systematically targeting the largest Alliance vessels first. Already, 2 heavy cruisers had been disabled, and a third was venting atmosphere. "What about their weapons?" Stone asked. "Any weaknesses?" Reed had joined Davis at the science station. "Their energy signatures suggest phase-locked plasma weapons. Very powerful, but—" He paused, thinking. "But they require precise calibration to maintain coherence." "Could we disrupt that calibration?" Stone asked. Reed's eyes lit up. "With our hybrid power system, maybe. If we could get close enough to their command ship and emit a broad-spectrum energy pulse at exactly the right frequency, it would disrupt all their weapons temporarily," Davis finished, catching on to Reed's thinking. "How temporarily?" Stone pressed. "Minutes at most," Reed admitted. "But that might be enough for the Alliance ships to regroup." Stone nodded decisively. "Miller, plot a course to that command ship. Full speed." Miller turned in surprise. "Sir, that would take us straight through the heart of their formation." "Exactly," Stone said grimly. "They won't expect one ship to charge them alone. Reed, prepare your energy pulse. Davis, transmit a message to the Alliance. Tell them to be ready to attack the moment the Razak weapons falter." As the Reclaimer accelerated toward the Razak formation, Admiral Krell's face appeared on the communication screen again. "Stone, what are you doing? Return to formation immediately." "No time to explain, Admiral," Stone replied calmly. "But be ready to attack in approximately 6 minutes." The Reclaimer streaked toward the massive Razak command ship. Along the way, 2 Razak cruisers turned to intercept, firing their energy weapons. But Miller executed a series of the approved maneuvers with such precision and timing that they seemed like entirely different tactics. The Razak shots missed by meters. "Their targeting systems are even more rigid than the Alliance's," Miller reported with a tight smile. "They can't adjust for unorthodox movements." As they closed on the command ship, Reed worked frantically at his station. "I've configured the pulse, but we'll need to get within 5,000 kilometers for it to be effective." Stone nodded. "Davis, open a channel to Captain Lorix." Lorix's concerned face appeared on screen. "Commander Stone, what are you planning?" "Your course is suicidal." "Captain, when we emit our pulse, the Razak weapons will be disrupted, but only briefly. You need to be ready to coordinate a counterattack the moment it happens." Understanding dawned on Lorix's face. The Admiral would never approve this plan. "Then don't tell him," Stone said simply. "Just be ready." As the communication ended, the massive bulk of the Razak command ship filled their view screen. It was an ugly vessel, all sharp angles and protruding weapon arrays, at least 5 times the size of the Reclaimer. "Distance to target?" Stone asked. 8,000 kilometers and closing, Miller reported. They're firing. A massive energy beam shot from the Razak ship directly toward the reclaimer. Miller rolled the ship hard to port, barely avoiding the blast. 3 more cruisers moving to cut us off, Davis warned. Stone leaned forward in his chair. Stay the course, Miller. Reed, stand by with that pulse. 7,000 kilometers, Miller called out. 6,000, they're firing again. This time. The beam grazed the reclaimer's port side. Alarms blared as emergency force fields activated to contain a hull breach. Minor damage to decks 3 and 4, a crew member reported. No casualties. 5,000 kilometers, Miller announced. Reed's hands flew over his controls. Initiating energy pulse, now. The reclaimer shuddered as every bit of power was channeled into a single massive burst of energy that expanded outward in all directions. For a brief moment, the space around them seemed to shimmer like heat waves over desert sand. Then the Razak command ship's weapons went dark, followed by those of the surrounding vessels. It worked, Davis exclaimed. Their weapons are offline. Stone opened a fleet-wide channel. All Alliance ships attack now. The Razak weapons are temporarily disabled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, led by Captain Lorix's cruiser, a group of Alliance ships surged forward, weapons blazing. The Razak vessels, suddenly vulnerable, began to turn away. And in the confusion of that moment, no one noticed as the reclaimer, its power systems critically strained by the massive energy, pulse drifted directly toward the Razak command ship, trailing debris and venting plasma. The reclaimer drifted silently toward the massive Razak command ship, its engines dark, emergency lights flickering throughout its corridors. On the bridge, red warning indicators covered nearly every display panel as Reed worked frantically at his engineering station. Main power is completely drained, he reported, his voice tight with tension. Backup systems are failing. We've got maybe 5 minutes of life support left. Commander Stone gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shuddered around him. Can we restore enough power to change course? Reed shook his head grimly. That energy pulse burned out half our systems. We're on a collision course with the Razak ship, and there's nothing we can do about it. Stone's face remained calm despite the dire situation. Then we make the most of it. Davis, are communications still working? Davis adjusted controls at his station. Barely, sir. Short range only. Send a message to Captain Lorix. Tell him our situation and that we need the Alliance fleet to focus their attack on the other Razak vessels. We'll handle the command ship. Miller turned from her useless pilot controls. Handle it how, exactly? We're dead in space. Stone unbuckled his restraints and stood up. Not yet, we're not. Reed, is the emergency thruster system still operational? Reed consulted his displays. Yes, but those are just for stabilization during repairs. They wouldn't generate enough force to... He stopped suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. You want to control our collision? Exactly, Stone confirmed. If we're going to hit them anyway, let's make it count. Davis, what's the most vulnerable part of a Razak dreadnought? Davis pulled up schematics on his screen. According to Alliance records from the previous war, their main reactor housing is located here. He pointed to a section near the rear of the ship. But our impact alone wouldn't be enough to breach it. Stone turned to Reed. What if we overloaded our own reactor just before impact? A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the implications became clear. Reed swallowed hard. That would create an explosion powerful enough to breach their reactor housing. But sir, that would mean... I know what it means, Stone cut him off. Begin the preparations, everyone else to the escape pods. No one moved. That's an order, Stone said firmly. Miller stood up from her station. With respect, Commander, if someone needs to pilot those emergency thrusters to hit the right spot, it should be me. Davis nodded. And I'll need to calculate the exact point of impact for maximum effect. Reed crossed his arms. The reactor overload sequence requires constant adjustment. I'm not leaving either. Stone looked at his senior officers, a mixture of pride and sorrow in his eyes. And the rest of the crew? Already heading for escape pods, sir, Reed confirmed. But the 4 of us need to stay. Outside the reclaimer, the battle had turned in the Alliance's favor. With their weapons temporarily disabled by the energy pulse, the Razak ships were vulnerable. Alliance cruisers, now organized into proper combat formation, pressed their advantage, destroying 3 enemy vessels and disabling several more. But the Razak command ship was already beginning to recover. Lights flickered across its hull as systems came back online. Their weapons will be operational again in less than 2 minutes, Davis warned, checking his sensors. Then we'd better work fast, Stone said. Reed, begin the reactor overload sequence. Miller, use whatever power we have left to adjust our trajectory. Davis, find me that weak point. As his officers worked, Stone opened a communication channel to the Alliance fleet. Admiral Krell's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of anger and amazement. Stone, what have you done? Your unauthorized actions have saved your fleet, Admiral. Stone interrupted calmly. But the job's not finished. The Razak command ship is recovering. We're on a collision course with it and intend to detonate our reactor on impact. Krell's expression changed to one of shock. That's suicide. It's necessary, Stone replied. But I need you to ensure it's not wasted. Once we hit, there will be a massive explosion. That's your chance to finish them off. He leaned closer to the screen. Don't waste it, Admiral. After a moment of silence, Krell nodded solemnly. We won't, Commander. He hesitated, then added, It seems I misjudged your ship and your people. A common mistake, Stone said with a small smile. Stone out. As the communication ended, Reed called from his station. Reactor overload sequence initiated. We've got 3 minutes until critical mass. Davis looked up from his calculations. I've found the optimal impact point, sending coordinates to Miller now. Miller's hands moved over the emergency thruster. Controls. Adjusting course, we'll only get one shot at this. The reclaimer trembled as small thrusters fired in sequence, gradually altering its trajectory toward a specific point on the massive Razak vessel, which now loomed large on their view screen. 2 minutes to critical mass, Reed announced. The ship's temperature was rising as the reactor moved toward overload. Stone opened the internal communication system. This is Commander Stone to any remaining crew. Final evacuation order. Get to escape pods immediately. He paused, then added, It has been my highest honor to serve with you all. Across the ship, the few remaining crew members raced to the escape pods. On the bridge, Stone and his senior officers worked at their stations, sweat beading on their foreheads as the temperature continued to climb. 1 minute 30 seconds to critical mass, Reed reported. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. Miller wiped sweat from her eyes. Course locked in. Impact in 1 minute 45 seconds. Stone nodded. Perfect timing. He looked around at his bridge crew one last time. I won't order you to stay until impact. Take the last escape pod. Davis looked up from his station. Too late for that, sir. The last pod just launched. Reed checked his display. Besides, someone needs to make final adjustments to the reactor timing. Miller smiled grimly. And someone needs to keep us on course if those emergency thrusters falter. Stone nodded, a lump in his throat. Then we finish this together. On the Dominant, Admiral Krell watched the reclaimers approach on his tactical display. All ships prepare to concentrate fire on the Razak command ship the moment the Earth vessel impacts, he ordered. Then, more quietly to his second-in-command. Record this. The Alliance should remember what happens here today. The reclaimer closed the final distance to the Razak ship, its hull creaking under the strain of the overloading reactor. Temperatures on the bridge had become nearly unbearable, but Stone and his officers remained at their posts. 30 seconds to critical mass, Reed called out, his voice hoarse. Reactor containment failing. Impact in 25 seconds, Miller reported, her hands steady on the thruster controls despite the heat. Stone opened a final communication channel to the Alliance fleet. This is Commander Stone of the Earth vessel Reclaimer. We are about to impact the Razak command ship. Stand ready to exploit the breach we create. He paused, then added, Remember JF-007. Davis looked up from his station, confusion on his sweat-streaked face. JF-007? I thought our designation was just JF-007. Stone smiled. It was. But from today forward, it'll mean something else. Just fixed 007 enemies. Seemed fitting. A small laugh escaped from Miller despite the dire situation. Not bad, Commander. 15 seconds to critical mass, Reed announced. The ship's structure was beginning to warp from the heat. Impact in 10 seconds, Miller called. 9, 8. As the countdown continued, Stone stood tall in the center of his bridge. It's been an honor, he said simply. 3, 2, 1. Impact. The reclaimer slammed into the precise weak point of the Razak command ship. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, as the Earth vessel's reactor reached critical mass, a blinding explosion erupted, tearing through both ships and creating a massive breach in the Razak vessel's reactor housing. A chain reaction followed, as the Razak's much larger power core destabilized. The explosion expanded outward, engulfing both ships in a sphere of energy that lit up space like a newborn star. From the Dominant, Admiral Krell watched in awe. Then, recovering his composure, he barked, "All ships, attack now! Concentrate all, fire on the breach." The Alliance fleet responded immediately, pouring weapons fire into the damaged section of the Razak command ship. Without their flagship's coordination, and with their own systems still recovering from the energy pulse, the remaining Razak vessels began to break formation. Within minutes, it was over. The Razak command ship broke apart in a final, spectacular explosion. Seeing their flagship destroyed, the remaining enemy vessels turned and fled, jumping to faster-than-light travel as soon as they were clear. As the debris field from the twin explosions began to disperse, a small object caught the attention of a sensor operator on the Dominant. "Admiral," the officer called out, "I'm detecting a small cluster of escape pods among the debris." Krell leaned forward. "Razak survivors?" "No, sir. They're from the Earth ship." Hope surged through the bridge. "Life signs? The sensor?" Operator worked his controls, then looked up with a smile. "Multiple life signs, Admiral. Including, yes, confirming identification now. Commander Stone and his senior officers." A cheer erupted across the Dominant's bridge, spreading quickly throughout the fleet as the news was relayed. Hours later, in the medical bay of the Dominant, Stone lay on a treatment bed, bandaged but very much alive. Around him, Reed, Miller, and Davis occupied similar beds, all being treated for burns and radiation exposure. "How?" Stone asked weakly as Admiral Krell entered the room. "We were still on the bridge at impact." Krell approached, standing tall but with a new respect in his eyes. "It seems your ship had one final surprise. The emergency teleportation system activated automatically, targeting the nearest escape pod. Apparently it was a feature your engineer added without logging it in your ship's official specifications." Reed grinned from his bed. "Thought it might come in handy someday." Krell shook his head in amazement. "Your scrap ship and its unorthodox modifications saved the entire fleet today." He straightened formally. "The Alliance Council has met in emergency session. They voted unanimously to reclassify the JF-007 designation. It will now be an honor given to ships that show exceptional innovation in the face of overwhelming odds." Stone tried to sit up, but winced in pain. "And what does JF-007 stand for, officially now?" Krell actually smiled. "Judgment Force 007. Though I've heard some captains already using your own interpretation instead." 1 week later, at an official ceremony aboard the repaired Alliance station, Stone and his crew stood at attention as medals were pinned to their uniforms. The entire surviving crew of the reclaimer was there, all recovered from their injuries. Admiral Krell addressed the assembled Alliance representatives. "The victory we celebrate today came at great cost, but would have been impossible without the courage and ingenuity of Earth's vessel." He turned to Stone. "Commander, the Alliance has approved resources for Earth to build a new ship, one incorporating both our advanced technology and your creative modifications." Stone nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Admiral. What will this new ship be called?" "Krell." handed him a data pad showing the specifications for a vessel unlike any in the fleet, part galactic precision, part Earth improvisation. The Alliance Council thought that decision should be yours, Commander. Stone looked at the design, then at his crew and smiled. We'll call her the Phoenix, but her designation will remain JF-07. As applause filled the hall, Reed leaned closer to Stone. Not bad for a pile of scrap, eh, Commander? Stone watched as galactic engineers studied diagrams of the Reclaimer's hybrid systems, already incorporating the lessons into new designs. Not bad at all, he agreed. Sometimes the best ships aren't the ones that look perfect. They're the ones that can surprise you when it matters most.